Hello and welcome. I'm Dorothy Simoni, and my goal this morning is to walk you through the directions for remedy keynote exercises. And when we're through, I hope you fully understand how to successfully complete this exercise. So here we go to get started. You will need the following references as we go through this. It will be very helpful if you have a printed copy of the keynote directions, and they were attached to your welcome email. So if you don't have them printed out, it would probably be helpful to have it printed. And a printed copy of the silica example that was also attached to your welcome email. And Morrison's desktop guide, that's the Materia Medica with the blue cover, and Vermeulen's Prisma, which is the Materia Medica with the purple cover. And we're going to be referring to both of those books, so please have them handy. So this exercise is really about building your knowledge of remedies or Materia Medica. So by working through this exercise, we hope you form a concise, basic understanding of each remedy. Now, when you go to do a case, you're going to look at more than just keynotes. But for this exercise, we're just building that fundamental understanding of a remedy. And it's also a way to help you organize the symptoms to aid your memory and to study the remedies for easier recall. And the more you know Materia Medica, the happier you will be with homeopathy and your success with homeopathy. So what's a keynote? So we have a couple of definitions. And a keynote is a symptom which is so apparent or striking that it strongly suggests or points to a single remedy. So that's from Yasgur's. And Yasgur's is your dictionary of homeopathy, and you should always have that handy because there's going to be lots of words you come across that are new or unusual, and Yasgur's is your first go-to. A second definition is the predominating symptom which readily directs attention to the totality. So I always think of keynotes as the major symptoms for that remedy, and that's what we're going to be focused on. So in Morrison, the keynotes are identified by a bullet or bold type or a bold type with a bullet. There are very few symptoms that just have a bullet, but they do show up every once in a while, and they're easy to miss, but they are also keynotes. In Prisma, which is the purple book, the keynotes are in caps or in italic. So anything that's in a plain font in both books is not considered a keynote. So that's what you're going to look for. Bold and bullet in Morrison and caps and italic in Prisma. So when you do the exercise, the directions have been laid out in a particular order, and we want you to follow that numbering and labeling. Otherwise, it's very hard to follow your work when you send it in. So please follow the outline that's on your directions. So the first thing that you're going to do when you start this exercise is you're going to identify the remedy with the name, and then you're going to look for the abbreviation. And the abbreviation is in Prisma. If you look at the top of the page, it's like the guide words in a dictionary. And that's an official abbreviation. And we want you to use the official abbreviations, because if you get creative with the abbreviations, it can identify a remedy that is not the right remedy. So let's stick to the abbreviations. Synthesis also has abbreviations in the appendix in the back. They start with the abbreviation and then give you the name of the remedy. And the reason for that is that in all the rubrics, the remedies are abbreviated. Otherwise, the book would be 10 times as big as it is. So you can look there, but it's going to start with the abbreviation. And if you look through that list, you'll see why the abbreviations are important, because there may be just, one letter or two letters that are that identify a different remedy. So another thing that comes up sometimes is, how do we pronounce this remedy? So in Yasgur's, there is a pronunciation key, which is very helpful. So, is it conium or conium? So, so an example here is, you're going to list the remedy, which is silica, and then put the abbreviation in parentheses. And then I also noted that silica is sometimes spelled a little bit differently. So you'll see it both ways with silica. So the next thing you're going to do is look for the source. And the source you're going to find in Prisma. And the source is helpful because it helps you form an idea of what that remedy looks like. So it might be a chemical, and so there's a chemical compound, which is in the case of silica, but it might also be a plant. It could be based on drawn from an animal, or some part of an animal or insect, or there's all kinds of the Berlin Wall is a remedy. So the source is interesting, and it also helps you to understand a little bit more about the remedy and to remember it. So Prisma also gives you a very nice background on all the remedies. So Vermeulen will tell you, like, the history of it and how it's been used, and myths that are attached to it, or so it's very interesting to read those introductions to the remedy in Prisma. If you want, you can add a picture, and that's usually very helpful to help you remember kind of what the remedy is all about. So here are some pictures that I found for silica. It's a little tough because it comes in many different forms. And adding a picture is totally optional, but sometimes it's helpful with the animals and the plants, because seeing the plant, you have maybe more of an association with it. But again, that's optional, but it does help your memory. So then the next thing you're going to do is identify the affinities. And the affinities are the parts of the body that remedy most affects. So that's very helpful to know when you're doing a case. Is this a remedy that that has mostly to do with the stomach, or the heart, or lungs, or emotional things? So Prisma has a section for each remedy that lists the affinities. It's a special little section. And again, in Prisma, the keynotes are in caps or in italic. So if you look on page 1232 for silica in Prisma, you'll find the affinities. It's its own little section. And below, I've written an example. So the affinities are nutrition, and affect children, and tissues, elastic and cellular, nerves, glands, bone, skin, left side, right side. So then we get to symptoms. And I'm just going to briefly go through what the categories are for the symptoms that you're going to be looking for. So mental emotional symptoms is pretty straightforward. That's thinking and feeling. Then general symptoms have to do with the whole person. And generally they are I statements. So I feel better in cold weather. I feel better while walking. I feel better after a nap. I feel better drinking milk. Whatever it is, you'll generally recognize them by I statements, and it affects the whole body. And then the physical symptoms, of course, concern a particular part of the body. So, color of skin, shape of nails, appearance of tongue. And in Morrison, he doesn't just have one section that's physical. divides them out into different sections, and they'll be different depending on the remedy and what physical symptoms are affected by that remedy. So you won't find the same headings or subheadings in every remedy because it depends on the remedy and what parts of the body it affects. So, but when you do your themes, you'll just have physical. You don't need to divide them into all the subsections that Morrison has. So then another set of symptoms are modalities, and that's a condition that makes the ill person or a particular symptom better or worse. So there are two kinds of modalities. One are general modalities, and again, they affect the whole person. So I feel worse in wet weather. That would be worse wet weather. I feel worse after midnight, worse after midnight. I'm generally aggravated from drafts, so I'm worse drafts, or I feel better after a nap, so better after nap. So those are things that generally affect the person. Then there are also physical modalities, and they pertain to a particular condition or ailment that is better or worse from something. So my headache, specific condition, is worse in sunlight. So we write it as head worse sunlight. My cramps are better if I bend double. So cramps are better bending double. My stomach ache is better if I drink milk. So stomach ache, better drink, milk. So in Morrison, he puts modalities in the generals and in the physicals. So you'll find them, but he doesn't separate them as modalities. But when you do casework, modalities are very important. They're very important symptoms are modalities, and they help you get to the remedy. So you want to know what modalities are. Okay. So then the next part is you're just going to study those keynotes. Now you know what a keynote is, you know the sections. You're just going to study them, look them over, and what you're looking for is getting an idea about what those symptoms are for that remedy. But you're also looking for similarities among the symptoms, because we're going to synthesize or join those symptoms together so that we have some big ideas about the remedy. So it's okay to cross sections if there are similar things that are in mental, emotional, and physicals. You can put them into one theme. Again, you're going to look for patterns, and in large remedies, you're going to identify the most prominent symptoms. You may not be able to gather all of the symptoms for a large remedy, but you'll be able to get most of them. And the idea is to form an image or a picture of the remedy. So how do we do the themes? That's the next section. So the themes are a way for you to start to distill and organize the symptoms into manageable groups of information. So for some remedies, you may have 30 to 50 symptoms, and that's a lot to just digest. So what we want to do is to help you form some patterns and some themes so that you don't have 50 things to remember for that remedy, but you have some ways to hang, some places to hang those ideas. So again, you're going to look for similarities among symptoms and group those symptoms together. They have to conceptually relate to each other. So they might all have to do with the heart, or they might all have to do with anxiety, or they might all have to do with the gastrointestinal system. And that's fine, but they have to have some relationship. And that's a way to reduce this long list of symptoms. And we're only going to use themes from Morrison for the keynotes. We're only going to use Morrison keynotes to identify the themes. So when you're writing out the symptoms to form a theme, we don't want you to change the wording. Often, sometimes, I won't say often, but sometimes I get work and people have kind of rewritten the symptoms, but it changes the meaning. And the symptoms are very specific. They're specific to that remedy and they're worded for a particular reason. So I don't want you to change the wording. And what you're going to do is string the related symptoms together into one line. So all the ones that have a relationship with each other, you're going to put together into one line. And you might be stringing together several different symptoms. So, and some of them are longer than others. They're not all just one word. So if there are several long symptoms, separate them by a semicolon. And you can abbreviate words, and you can use the symbols greater than or less than, or other symbols that might be. But again, don't rewrite the symptoms. And please separate each new theme by a bullet or some sort of symbol, because some of the themes will be several lines long, and it's not always easy to tell when your theme is ended and when the next theme begins. So use something, a bullet or a dash or something, so that we know where the theme begins. Okay, so you're going to limit the themes for each section to about 5. If it's a large remedy, you can stretch it to 6. If you have fewer than 5 themes, add the most important individual keynotes. So there may be keynotes that don't fit into a theme. It's just a standalone. So look for the themes first and then add the most important individual keynotes. And in a large remedy, you may need to leave out a few, particularly a few individual keynotes. So look them over and pick the ones that you think are the most important. So here's some examples for silica. So mental, emotional symptom themes. We've got yielding, refined, delicate patience, and then linked with that is lack of self-confidence. So we've got lots of things to do with anxiousness. So anxious, conscientious over small details, and anxiety from noise. And obstinate. So they hold to convictions about which he will not argue. And then stage fright is a single symptom. So it often helpful and helps you to remember if once you write the symptom, then you give it a title. So yielding might be a title, or anxiety, because we've got several bits of anxiety there, or obstinate and stage fright. So you don't have to do that, but it is helpful. So here are the general symptoms, and I've highlighted some things: failure to thrive in infants, delayed development in children, poor metabolism of minerals, frequent colds and flus, glands enlarged, hard, may suppurate, chilly, worse cold weather, worse drafts or uncovering, weakness, fatigue, collapse. And there are a lot of physical symptoms for silica. And so we've got constipation with no urging, bashful stool recedes after nearly extruding, inflammation, acute and chronic otitis media, serous otitis, pharyngitis, tonsillitis, sinusitis, mastitis. You see the pattern there. So infections, infection of tear ducts in newborns, dental abscesses, gum infections, acne, ingrown toenails. Perspiration is another big thing for silica. Feet, often offensive, profuse, corrosive, scalp, especially during sleep, and sour perspiration. So defects, we've got crippled, fragile nails, white spots on nails, defective hair, teeth, poor metabolism of minerals, bunions, scoliosis, spinal curvatures, calcification, and defects in fistulas. So then when you get that all done and you have your themes, then the very last thing that you're going to do is one more reduction. And that is to review the list of themes and identify key words or phrases that will help trigger your memory of the remedy. So you can put in pictures if you want to. You don't have to list sections, and pick words or phrases that aid your memory. It may not be the words or titles that you put in with your themes. It might be something else. So this is really, it's like you have this list that you can start with and say, okay, yeah, silica has, and so here's one that I've done. Obstinate. They're obstinate, but they also can be yielding. And they have anxiety and infections and sweat and delayed development. And they're chilly and constipation and defects. So those are words that you can memorize, and then you can go back to your themes and add the more detail. So you know what kind of anxiety silica has, or you know what kind of infections they have. So you can go both ways to help with your memorizing. We'd like you to proofread before you submit your assignment. Please proofread and for clarity and spelling. If you use Word, it underlines those words that you misspelled, and sometimes there are homeopathy words that you've spelled correctly that get underlined. But please check your work. And as you do these, you will come across words in the Materia Medica that are new to you. Look them up in Yasgur's or a medical dictionary and write the meaning in the margin. It will help you a lot when you're going back and trying to learn this. It's very helpful to do that. So take the time to look it up, because you will come across words you don't understand. And it will serve you well in the long run. Okay, so just to review, you're going to look up, put the remedy name in the abbreviation. You'll go to Prisma for the abbreviation. The remedy source is in Prisma, and the affinities are in Prisma. And then you're going to study the keynote list in Morrison, and that's bold and bulleted symptoms. And then you're going to identify the themes and write your themes, link any related symptoms together so that you have a more concise idea, and then identify the keywords or trigger words that are going to help you remember the remedy.